The air in King's Landing smelled of ash and blood. The Red Keep, once soaked in the luxury of southern royalty, now stood still and heavy-haunted by silence. Ravens flew low across the sky, their wings slicing through the smoke that had risen only 2 days ago when the city gates were broken and the Lannister banners torn from their towers. Ned Stark stood at the edge of the Iron Throne, not sitting, never sitting. He had taken the city not for power, but to restore order. His face, lined with exhaustion and quiet rage, barely moved as the great hall echoed with the whispers of the broken court. Most of the nobles had fled, others stayed out of fear, not loyalty. He had won, but it didn't feel like victory. Cersei Lannister had been found trying to flee the city in disguise. She wore a servant's cloak, her golden hair shaved down to hide her identity. It didn't work. Arya had been the one to spot her. The girl hadn't smiled when they dragged the queen down the cobblestone streets. She had stared, cold, empty, like she'd been waiting for this moment, since her father's execution never came to pass, because in this version of the world, Ned Stark had not died. Instead, after King Robert's death, Ned revealed the truth about Joffrey's illegitimacy to the entire court publicly, and with proof. The small council divided, but Stannis marched early with forces from Dragonstone, with support from the north, the Vale, and even House Tully, who refused to see their son-in-law executed. Ned was able to seize King's Landing before the Lannisters could fully tighten their grip. Joffrey died in the chaos. Rumors said it was a stray arrow. Others whispered that it was a northern blade through his throat. No one asked too many questions. Now, with the war mostly over, Ned was named protector of the realm. Stannis refused to take the crown, citing Ned's honor-bound popularity. The lords of Westeros, tired of blood, reluctantly agreed. But the Iron Throne was not meant for men like Ned Stark. He stood there, still staring at the cold seat of swords, knowing it wasn't made for peace. Footsteps. Sir Davos entered quietly, bowing his head, respectful. "They want a king," Davos said, "but they don't want a good man. You know that, right?" Ned didn't answer at first. His hand rested lightly on his greatsword, now more symbol than weapon. "I never wanted this," Ned muttered. "But wanting has little to do with it," Davos nodded. "That's the problem. The realm didn't want justice. It wanted comfort. It wanted silence after screams. And Ned Stark, though noble and true, had become a reminder of everything the South tried to bury: the lies of lineage, the greed of lords, the rotting of a kingdom that began long before Robert's death. Even with Cersei in chains and Tyrion held as a prisoner for trial, the Lannister name still whispered in the halls like smoke from a fire not yet put out. And there was trouble in the north too. Robb had declared himself king in the north not long after the first signs of war. When he heard his father lived and held the capital, Robb began to march home. But his bannermen had tasted war. They had buried kin. They didn't want peace. They wanted a free north. Robb struggled to hold them together. Ravens had arrived daily with harsh words. Robb did not want to bend the knee, not even to his father. Ned hadn't yet written back. His thoughts broke as Arya entered the hall. She was no longer the little girl chasing cats and fencing with sticks. Her face was marked by days in the wild, eyes sharper than steel. She walked with the confidence of Someone who'd seen more death than life. They're chanting your name in the streets, she said. They say the North rules now. Ned's jaw tightened. I never ruled for chance. I know, Arya said softly. Then, after a pause, she asked, do you think Mother would have wanted this? That question struck deeper than any. Sword. He didn't answer her. He couldn't. Instead, he looked back toward the Iron Throne, its jagged edges, twisted blades, forged in conquest and cruelty. And still, men fought to sit upon it. He hadn't sat down yet. He feared that if he ever did, he would never stand back up again. And somewhere beyond the walls of the Red Keep, a raven flew toward Winterfell, carrying a message Robb would not like. The raven reached Winterfell 3 days later. Robb Stark stood in the Godswood when Maester Ludi brought him the letter. The boy who had once played with Grey Wind among the snow-covered trees was long gone. The war had carved lines into his face that no time could erase. His armor bore the direwolf of House Stark, but his heart was torn between blood and crown. He opened the letter slowly, reading his father's words under the rustle of autumn leaves. The message was brief, like his father's usual way, measured, cold, and painfully direct. Robb, the realm bleeds, and I have no wish to see the North suffer more. Bend the knee and come to King's Landing. We will restore peace together as a family. Ned, Robb crushed the parchment in his hand. Bend the knee? After all they'd lost? After Theon's betrayal? After the Red Fork and the Whispering Wood? After watching northern sons die for a crown that wasn't made of gold, but of pride, pain, and ice? He walked back to the great hall, where his bannermen waited. Lord Karstark, grim and still bloodthirsty. The Greatjon, loud as ever. Galbart Glover. Mage Mormont. All of them had raised their swords for Robb, not for Ned, not for the South. He threw the crumpled letter on the table. My father wants me to bend the knee, he said simply. Silence fell like snow. The Greatjon let out a snort. Tell him. We'll bend nothing but the bones of any southern lord who dares ride past Moat Cailin. But it wasn't that easy. They were speaking of Ned Stark. Not a tyrant, not a southern fool, but a man of principle, a man they all respected. That made it harder to disobey, harder to betray, and yet Robb couldn't shake the anger burning in his chest. He turned to the flames in the hearth, as if seeking answers in their dance. Catelyn entered quietly, her presence still commanding. She looked at her son, then at the silent lords, and finally at the crumpled letter. You knew he would ask this, she said. He's asking me to kneel to a throne I never wanted, Robb said, voice low. To a kingdom that never protected the North. He wants peace, but it comes with chains. Catelyn studied him for a long moment, then sat beside the fire. Your father is trying to end a war. You're trying to win one, she said. You're both doing what you think is right. But he doesn't understand, Robb said. We're already kings. He made peace with the South, but I made war with it. And now you have to choose, Catelyn said. Your honor or your father. The weight of it nearly crushed him. Back in King's Landing, Ned sat in the war room of the Red Keep, reading over reports. Dorne was restless. The Reach hadn't fully committed, and there were rumors, whispers of dragons, of Targaryen banners flickering across the sea, but none of it troubled him more than the silence from Winterfell. He'd sent another raven. No reply. He could almost feel Catelyn's voice in his head. You raised Robb to be strong. Now you have to live with the man he became. In the dungeons, Cersei remained silent. She hadn't spoken a word in weeks, not even during her trial. She sat on the stone floor, back straight, eyes empty. Ned visited her once, only once. You could have avoided this, he told her. She smirked weakly. So could you. Tyrion was another story. He argued, bargained, even joked his way through his imprisonment. He claimed he had information about Daenerys, about ships gathering in Essos. Ned had no love for him, but he listened. The realm wasn't safe. Not yet. Not ever. One morning, Arya stormed into Ned's solar. Her face was flushed with anger. You're waiting too long, she said. Robb's not going to kneel. You should ride north. Remind him who raised him. I raised him to be proud, Ned said. That pride now sits on a throne of bones. Arya didn't back down. Then maybe he needs to see the cost. He stared at his daughter. Her voice had the fire of Lyanna, the same storm behind her eyes, but this war was different. It wasn't about right and wrong anymore. It was about what remained when all the blood was spilled. Later that night, he sat alone in the battlements, watching the torches flicker across the city. He could hear the people. Some sang his name, others cursed it. The North cheered him. The South feared him. And in between, the cracks of the realm widened. He had won the War of 5 Kings, but he was losing everything else. The moon hung low over Blackwater Bay, casting a pale light on the broken ships still bobbing quietly in the harbor, remnants of a war that should have ended but refused to die. In the heart of the Red Keep, Ned Stark sat with his hands folded, listening as his small council argued around him like squawking crows. The Reach will never fully support us until you give Margaery a royal match, Lord Grafton was saying, his voice oily and persistent. I am not whoring out my son, Ned said flatly. Then you risk the Tyrells turning their strength toward Old Town, or worse, to Stannis, or back to the Lannisters, gods forbid. Ned stood, ending the discussion with silence. They were all the same Southern men who saw marriage as currency, loyalty as a loan, and peace as something bought in flesh. He walked out of the chamber, not waiting for their bowing and mutters. Outside, Arya waited for him, arms crossed. They're going to try to control you. All of them, she said. He gave her a tired smile. Let them try. But Arya wasn't smiling. You know what they say when you're not in the room? She asked. They say you're too soft, too northern, too honorable. And they say you'll end up like Jon Arryn. That name froze the air between them. Arya didn't flinch. She was no longer afraid of consequences. She had seen too much to fear whispers. That night, Ned couldn't sleep. He stared at the fire in his chambers, drinking slowly from a cup of wine he didn't really want. He thought of Winterfell. He thought of Robb. He thought of John, who still served at the wall, sending letters full of icy reports and nothing personal. Jon, who had chosen duty over family and now stood watch while the rest of the world burned. A knock interrupted his thoughts. It was Sir Davos. Robb has replied, he said, offering a scroll sealed in stark gray. Ned opened it carefully. His son's words were colder than the wall. Father, I will not kneel, not for the South, not even for you. The North has bled for its freedom. I will not be the Stark remembered for giving it away. Robb, king in the North, no anger, no warmth. Just distance. Ser Davos spoke gently. We've sent ravens to the Vale. The Eyrie may choose a side if pressed. If the North refuses your peace. Ned didn't let him finish. I will not raise a blade against my son. Davos looked uneasy. You may not have a choice, my lord. A week passed. Then another dot, and then came the news from Essos Daenerys Targaryen had landed on Dragod Nastod with 3 dragons and an army of unsullied. Ned stood at the painted table in the old Targaryen war room, staring at the crude map of Westeros. Dragonstone had always loomed as a threat, but it was a distant one. Now it was here, real, fire-breathing, unstoppable. Lord Royce, who had reluctantly returned to the capital, slammed a fist on the table. This is why we needed the North united. Now we faced dragons without half our strength. Ned remained calm, even as panic swelled in the room. We still have the South, said Lord Grafton. Dorne is neutral, the Reach is hesitant, but the Stormlands are loyal. And Stannis still holds Dragonstone's waters. He may not be king, but he's still a threat to her. Ned looked down at the map, at the little wooden pieces meant to represent armies, ships, cities. It all felt like a game to them. Just like Robert's rebellion had felt like a game to Robert. But people died in these games. Thousands. John Arryn had once warned him, the realm is not ruled by swords. It's ruled by whispers, debts, and children. He had ignored that once. He would not. Again. The next morning, Ned called for Arya. She came with Needle at her side, always within reach. I want you to ride to Winterfell, he said. Talk to Robb, not as a soldier, as his sister, as someone he still trusts. Arya frowned. He won't listen to me. He might, Ned said. If he won't listen to me? She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll go. But if he won't come back, I won't either. Ned gave her a soft smile. That's fair. He watched her ride out that afternoon, fast and silent, a wolf sent north through troubled lands. The weight of the realm pressed harder on his shoulders. Fire in the east, ice in the north, and in the middle stood a Stark who never wanted to be king. The storm reached Winterfell 2 days before Arya did. Cold rain slammed against stone walls as thunder rolled across the sky like angry drums. Robb stood in the courtyard, soaked and stubborn, watching the black clouds tighten above the north. He hadn't slept, not really for nights. His dreams were filled with shadows of wolves and flames, and a voice he couldn't place whispering, "You're not your father." When Arya arrived, she looked like a ghost of Winterfell, returned wet, cloaked in mud and road dust, but upright and sharp-eyed. Gray wind howled the moment he smelled her. The direwolf circled her once before growling low, not from threat, but from confusion. She didn't smell like Arya anymore. She smelled like blood and steel. Robb embraced her anyway. "You came back," he said. "Not for good," she replied. They sat in the great hall later, alone except for gray wind and a small fire crackling. In the hearth, the North still bore its scars-burned villages, broken families, boys without fathers, daughters who no longer sang. Every feast felt like a funeral now. Arya didn't waste time. "Father wants peace," she said. Robb looked down at the table. "Peace for whom? For everyone." "No," Robb said. for the South, for the lords who play games, for the same nobles who watched him nearly lose his head in that very city. Arya's eyes narrowed. He saved the realm from another Joffrey, and now he wants me to bow for it. They stared at each other in silence, brother and sister, on opposite ends of a broken kingdom. Then Arya leaned forward. You think you're the only one who lost something in this war? I saw Father in chains. I saw what they did to him. And he still chose mercy. That mercy cost us the North, Robb growled. No, Robb, she said. Your pride might cost us the North. His jaw clenched. You sound like him. Good, she said. Someone should. That night, Arya walked through the God's Wood alone. She stood before the weirwood tree, its face still weeping red down its bark. She whispered something, quiet as snowfall. Don't let me lose them all. Back in King's Landing, Ned Stark met with Varys. The spider appeared like a shadow, his usual calm expression hiding whatever schemes brewed beneath his silk. She has dragons, Varys said simply. 3. I know, Ned replied, and fire obeys her. I saw it in Mirren. She is no ordinary girl. She's still a Targaryen, Ned said. That name burned thousands. And your name froze thousands in silence, Varys replied. Not unkindly. We all inherit something bloody. Ned looked away. What does she want? Justice, revenge, the throne. Maybe all three, but she believes it belongs to her by right. Nothing belongs by right, Ned said. It belongs by choice or not at all. Varys smiled. That is why you will not survive this game. That same day, Tyrion was brought before Ned again. The imp looked thinner now, pale and sunken-eyed but still smirking. You're losing this kingdom? Lord Stark, one raven at a time. Ned raised an eyebrow. You think I don't know that? You think the people care about dragons? They'll cheer for whoever feeds them. You want their loyalty? Give them bread, ale, and someone to blame. I'm not here to rule with lies. Then you'll be remembered as the last honest king before the world burned. Ned turned away, tired of listening. But Tyrion had one more thing to say. She'll come. And when she does, you'll either kneel or burn. And your honor, your sacred northern honor, won't shield you from fire. By the end of that week, news had spread. Daenerys had marched past Storm's End. Unopposed, half the Reach had sent envoys, offering fealty. And in Old Town, the High Septon had declared her the flame of redemption. She hadn't even reached King's Landing yet, and already the people whispered her name in the same breath as salvation. Ned sat in the quiet of his chambers that night, rereading Robb's letter. The ink had faded slightly, but the message was still clear. The North will not kneel. The door creaked open and Sansa entered. She hadn't spoken much since the Lannisters fell, since she watched the sept where she was meant to marry burn to the ground. But tonight her voice was calm and clear. Father, if she reaches the gates, what will you do? Ned didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, I will do what must be done. As a Stark, as a man of the realm. Sansa nodded. But her eyes betrayed something else. Fear. Because she already knew the truth. This war wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The sea wind whipped through the cliffs of Dragonstone, thick with salt and smoke, as if the island itself were trying to remember what it meant to hold fire again. Daenerys Targaryen stood at the edge of the fortress, her silver hair caught in the wind, her dragons circling high above the sea like gods that had come home. Viserion screeched. Rhaegal followed close behind, and above them Drogon glided silently, casting a massive shadow on the scorched stone below Dot. Behind her stood Missandei and Grey, Worm, loyal, silent, watching their queen with the reverence of those who believed, not just in her name, but in her destiny. Tyrion arrived behind them, a hood pulled over his head, his face worn from the long journey back from captivity. "He's holding the city," Tyrion said without preamble. "Not with force, with honor. That makes him dangerous." Daenerys didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed fixed on the horizon where smoke still lingered over King's Landing like a ghost that hadn't moved on. "I've read the reports," she said. "Ned Stark is no butcher." "No," Tyrion replied. "He's worse." She turned slightly, brows raised. "He's the kind of man people trust," Tyrion continued. "And when they trust him, they follow him, even if it kills them." Daenerys was quiet. "Would you rather I burn the city now?" she asked. Tyrion paused. "No, that would make you her." He didn't say Cersei's name, but they both heard it in the silence. Daenerys finally turned. Her face was calm, but her voice was steel. "If Ned Stark does not bend the knee, I will take the city. The dragons will fly, the north will bleed, and the people will learn that fire does not ask permission." In King's Landing, the people were afraid. They could feel it in the air, the way the sky seemed to dim earlier in the day, the way the wind came faster through the alleys. Word of Daenerys had spread, whispered in bakeries, stables, and brothels. The Dragon Queen, the breaker of chains. The storm reborn Dot, and in the Red Keep, Ned Stark prepared. He stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The streets were filled with refugees, now people from the Riverlands, the Westerlands, even some from the south, all seeking shelter behind walls that had once kept them out. And now they were trapped. Ser Davos entered with news. "She's landed at Duskendale. Her army will be at the gates within the week." Ned nodded. No panic, just a weight that settled deeper into his bones. "And the north?" Davos hesitated. "Arya returned. Robb is not coming." Ned looked down. "Did she try?" "She did more than try. He loves her. But he fears becoming a memory. He believes if he bows now, he'll be remembered as the Stark who broke." Ned didn't reply. He didn't need to. He already knew what was coming. That night, Arya stood with her father in the crypts beneath the Red Keep. They were empty and cold, not like Winterfell, where even the dead felt like kin. These tombs held kings and queens who died clutching secrets, not swords. She stared at the statue of Rhaenys Targaryen, shattered, half her face missing from when the Lannisters ransacked the chamber years ago. "Do you think they were monsters?" Arya asked. Ned looked at the broken stone, then back to his daughter. "No," he said. "They were just people who forgot what it meant to lose." Arya's hand was on her sword the whole time. She didn't realize it. The next day the dragons were seen. 3 shadows crossed over the city before noon. People screamed in the streets. Bells rang from towers. Archers loaded bolts that would never reach Dot, and in the Red Keep, Ned Stark finally walked into the throne room, not to rule, but to speak. He stood before the Iron Throne, his voice echoing through the hall as messengers. Guards and nobles gathered, "When I was a boy, I believed kings were chosen by the gods," he said. "That power was a matter of blood. Now I know the truth. The realm chooses. Through war, through fear, through memory." He looked up at the throne, still unclaimed. "I will not burn this city. Not for pride, not for the North, not even for peace. If Daenerys wants the crown, let her come. Let her speak. Let her show the people who she truly is." And with that he turned and walked away. Not one man followed him out. The hall remained silent until the bells of surrender began to ring, not from the south, but from the sky, because Drogon had landed outside the city gates and Daenerys Targaryen had arrived. The gates of King's Landing stood tall, iron-bound and silent as Daenerys Targaryen approached with dragons in the sky. Unsullied at her back, the city did not resist. No arrows flew. No firepots were lit. Only the wind moved, thick with smoke and tension. Drogon landed on the cracked earth just beyond the gates, folding his wings with slow, deliberate grace. The people who had gathered on the walls, archers, watchmen, even. Some children backed away in terrified awe. Daenerys rode slowly behind Grey Worm and Missandei, draped not in armor, but in Targaryen black and red. She looked every inch a queen, not because of her crown, but because of the silence that followed her like a shadow. She did not demand surrender. She expected it inside the city. Ned Stark waited on the steps of the Red Keep. He wore no crown, only his gray cloak and the sword of House Stark across his back. Ice no longer gleamed like a symbol of judgment. Now it was simply a reminder of what he once had to do. The moment she entered the gates, Daenerys didn't look at the crowd. She looked straight ahead, at the man who had won a war without sitting on the throne. Their eyes met. No banners were raised. No trumpet sounded, just quiet. Suspicious, heavy, exhausted quiet. Ned stepped forward. He didn't kneel, but he didn't reach for his sword either. "I am not your enemy," he said. "You hold the throne," she replied calmly. "That makes you mine." "I hold the city," Ned corrected, "not the throne." "You speak like a lord of riddles," she said. "But you still rule. You still command." "I hold it until someone worthy takes it," he said. "That's what Robert asked of me. That's what I swore." She raised her chin. "And what makes me unworthy?" Ned didn't answer right away. He looked past her, to Drogon, to the army, to the frightened citizens peering from behind barrels and broken doors. "You are not your father," he said finally. "But you bring dragons to a starving city, and the people fear that." Her voice lowered. "Fear is the only language Westeros has ever understood." "Then I pity the realm," Ned said, "because it has heard nothing else." The tension crackled like stormlight between them. Then Daenerys stepped closer. "If I offered peace, if I offered to rebuild this kingdom not as a conqueror, but as its rightful queen, would you bend the knee?" Ned studied her. He saw the fire in her eyes. Not just anger, not madness purpose. The same purpose that had burned cities in Essos, that had freed thousands, but had also taken thousands more in her wake. "I do not kneel to dragons," Ned said softly. "I kneel to mercy." Her eyes narrowed. "Then you kneel to nothing." Behind her, Drogon rumbled, and above the Red Keep, crows scattered. Arya watched from the shadows on the parapet, hand on needle, heart beating fast. She couldn't read her father's face, but she could read hers. Daenerys wasn't here to share the kingdom. She was here to claim it. Missandei stepped forward and announced, "Her Grace, Daenerys of House Targaryen, first of her name." "Enough," Ned said, his voice hardening. "I don't care for names. I care for what you will do." Daenerys flinched, just slightly, but enough to show she was growing tired of the charade. "You will step aside," she said, voice cold now, "or your people will burn with you." And there it was. No more titles. No more pretending. Just fire. And the choice that always came with it. Ned said nothing, but he took one step back toward the red keep. Not retreating. Choosing. Daenery. Single quotes. His face froze. "You would rather see your family die than bend?" she asked. "I would rather they see a man who stood," he replied. Suddenly, a single horn blew from the east gate. Riders, banners flapping in the wind. Arya looked over the wall and felt her breath catch. The wolf had come. Robb Stark rode through the city gates with his bannermen behind him, Mormont, Glover, Karstark. Their swords were clean, but their faces told of sleepless nights and uncertain choices. When he saw Daenerys, he stopped. When he saw his father, he dismounted. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't even speak, but the wolves had returned to the capital. And for the first time since the rebellion, two Starks stood before the Iron Throne, one with the burden of peace, the other with the fire of war closing in. Daenerys looked between them. "So this is your answer," she said. "You bring another pretender." "He's not a pretender," Ned said. "He's my son." Robb stepped forward and looked her in the eyes. "I didn't come to fight," he said. "I came to end it." Daenerys said nothing, but Drogon lifted his wings, and somewhere in the Red Keep a bell began to ring again, slow, heavy, unsure. This wasn't surrender. This was the breath before the storm. The moment stretched like a blade drawn too long. Robb Stark stood in the center of King's Landing, surrounded by Unsullied who gripped their spears tighter, and Stark bannermen who refused to flinch. Across from him stood Daenerys Targaryen, her eyes sharp with heat, her hand resting lightly on Drogon's black, battle-scarred neck. Above them the city held its breath, and in the stillness, Ned Stark stepped between them. "No more," he said, voice not loud but firm, final, like winter itself had spoken. Daenerys didn't move. "You said you wouldn't raise your sword," she said, her voice like ice over fire. "Was that a lie?" "I'm not raising it," Ned replied. "But I won't lower my family's head either." Drogon let out a low growl, smoke curling from his nostrils. Just a breath of fire would turn the square to ash. The Unsullied adjusted their stance. Northern archers reached for arrows. It would take one wrong word for everything to collapse. But Robb didn't blink. "I didn't come here to fight dragons," he said slowly, eyes never leaving Daenerys. "But I won't kneel to them either." "You're the reason the North still bleeds," Daenerys said, venom slipping into her tone. "You divided the realm the moment you crowned yourself." "I crowned myself when I buried thousands of my own," Robb said. "When the South turned its back on us, when you were still across the sea playing savior to strangers." Ned turned to him sharply. But Robb wasn't finished. "You say you've broken chains," he continued. "Then don't forge new ones here. We're not your enemies. But we are not your subjects." Daenerys stepped forward. "No kingdom survives division," she said. The last time the North seceded, the dragons came, and they burned the world back into order. Ned's voice cut through again. And how long did that order last? Until your father slaughtered innocents in the name of fear? That struck deep. Daenerys' jaw tightened. The crowd behind the barricades gasped. Her hand curled into a fist dot, but then something in her eyes flickered. Not rage. Something else? Sadness? No matter what I do, she said, quieter now, people see my father. Ned's voice softened. Because you carry his fire, and you carry a sword that never bends, she said. Tell me, Lord Stark, what happens when fire and ice meet in the middle of the realm? Before Ned could answer, a scream echoed through the city walls. Then another. Then a horn. From the western gate, a rider came, bloodied and gasping, falling from his horse near the plaza. They're coming, he wheezed. Ships, black sails, the Kraken, Euron Greyjoy. The silence shattered. Arya appeared beside her father almost instantly. He's not alone. I saw sails from the parapet. At least 30. Daenerys turned swiftly to Grey Worm, who had already raised his hand. The Unsullied began to reposition, moving through the city like a silent tide. He dares to come now? She hissed. He doesn't care about thrones, Arya said. He cares about chaos. And the more we fight each other, the easier we fall. Ned looked to Robb. We don't have time for pride. Robb's face was stone. You said you wouldn't kneel. I won't, Ned said. But I'll stand beside anyone who would protect the realm. Daenerys turned away, pacing as Drogon hissed behind her. Every second counted. She knew it. They all did. Then slowly she faced them again. Her words were measured, but they weighed more than crowns. If we fight together, Stark and Targaryen, there will be no burning, no kneeling. Not today. Robb didn't smile, but he nodded. I'll hold the western wall, he said. I know his tactics. He likes noise. He hides in storms. And I'll send Drogon to the coast, Daenerys said, her voice sharpening. Let Euron taste fire. As the alliance formed in real time, Ned looked out over the city. For a moment, he allowed himself to hope. Then he turned to Arya. I need you to do something. She looked up, waiting. If this goes badly, if the Kraken breaks through, or if the dragons turn, you get Sansa out. You ride north. You make sure Winterfell stands. Arya didn't argue, but her voice was low when she answered. You don't get to die down here. He smiled faintly. I already did, once. Hours later, fire lit the western sky as Euron's fleet sailed into Blackwater Bay under cover of night. The true battle had begun, but this time, fire and ice stood together, and for one brief moment, the realm remembered unity. Even if it wouldn't last, the sky above Blackwater Bay was chaos. Flames roared, sails burned, and the sea churned like a living beast as Euron Greyjoy's fleet clashed against the defenses of King's Landing. His black ships came fast, cutting through the dark waters like wolves in a chicken coop. Ironborn screamed battle songs while their axes cut through air and bone alike. From above, Drogon descended like the wrath of the gods. One deep breath, and the sea lit up. Ships cracked in half, sails turned to ash. Men dove into boiling waves to escape fire that didn't forgive. Daenerys rode the dragon high, her silver hair trailing behind her like the tail of a comet. But there were too many ships, too many places to strike at once. Below, on the western wall of the city, Robb Stark stood among his men, sword raised high. Northern archers lined the ramparts, launching volleys down onto the docks where the Ironborn had made landfall. Gray wind moved beside him, snarling and ripping through any man who made it past the gates. It was blood and mud and steel. No banners. Just survival. They've breached the third gate. A soldier shouted, "More coming from the south." Robb turned to Galbart Glover. "Hold the left. Push them toward the fire." "We'll be overrun," Galbart said, eyes wide. Robb gritted his teeth. Then let them drown in it." The Red Keep, meanwhile, had become the last wall behind the walls. Ned stood at its highest tower, watching the horizon darken with flame and smoke. He saw Drogon pass, once, then vanish behind the inferno. He didn't know if Daenerys was alive. He didn't know if any of them would survive the night. Sansa stood behind him, arms crossed, face pale but calm. "I never thought I'd die here," she said. "You won't," Ned replied. "You can't promise that." "No," he said, "but I can promise I won't let it happen without a fight." Arya appeared moments later, splattered with blood that wasn't hers. She had taken 5 men in the alleys. She didn't say it. It was just obvious. "There's movement near the Sept," she said. "Ironborn trying to flank through the old tunnels. I can cut them off." Ned grabbed her arm. "Not alone." She pulled away. Always alone. And then she was gone, like a shadow swallowed by firelight. On the docks, Euron Greyjoy laughed. As he walked through the wreckage, shirtless and soaked in blood and seawater, his axe dripped. He had killed a Stark bannerman with his bare hands, snapped his neck while laughing about Winterfell. He climbed the ash-covered steps toward the city walls, as if he expected the gods to bow to him now. Robb saw him. He recognized that smile. He didn't wait. He charged. The 2 men met with a clash of steel and fury. Euron's axe swung wild, brutal. Robb's sword moved with purpose. Gray wind lunged at the Kraken's men, tearing through their line as the last of the northern guard closed around them. The duel was not graceful. It was personal, ugly, honest. "You're just another boy with a dead wolf's name," Euron shouted as he swung. "And you're just another coward hiding behind chaos," Robb answered, slashing across Euron's shoulder. Steel met steel, blood hit stone, and then Robb buried his sword through Euron's gut. The Kraken fell to his knees, but he smiled through the blood. "We're all just salt in the end." And then he died. The tide turned quickly after that. Without Euron, the Ironborn scattered. Drogon returned from the sea, wings torn, fire sputtering but still alive. The remaining ships burned or fled into the mist. Dawn broke. The smoke slowly drifted away over the bay, revealing the smoldering wreckage of battle. Bodies littered the streets. Water ran red through the gutters, but King's Landing still stood. Daenerys landed Drogon outside the Red Keep, limping as she dismounted. Robb met her at the courtyard gate. His armor was cracked, his face cut, but he stood tall. They didn't speak. They only nodded. Ned joined them minutes later, walking slowly through the ash-covered stone, with Sansa behind him. He looked at the 2 of them, one forged by fire, the other by ice. "The people will need more than silence," Ned said. Daenerys turned to face the burning bay. "Then give them truth." That afternoon the realm heard it. From the steps of the Red Keep, Lord Eddard Stark stood before a sea of broken, silent people. The banners of the Kraken hung burned behind him. The dragons circled once more, then flew beyond the city, high toward the sky. "The war is over," Ned said. "There will be no more kings, no more crowns stolen through fire and blood. From this day, Westeros will be ruled by council, not conquest. The North will remain free. The South will govern itself. The throne is gone." Behind him, the Iron Throne broken, melted by Dragon that very morning, shattered into slag. "What we build now must be better than what came before," Ned finished, "or we will burn again." And the people didn't cheer, they didn't clap, they just listened, because for the first time in a long time, someone spoke not like a ruler, but like a man who had lost everything and still chose to stand. That night, Arya left the city. She didn't say goodbye. Jon Snow never returned a letter, but the ravens stopped mentioning him entirely. It was said he disappeared north of the Wall, never seen again. Sansa returned to Winterfell. Robb ruled the North, not as a king, but as warden, just like his father. Quiet, distant. Changed Dot and Daenerys? She stayed not to rule, but to rebuild. She met the people, heard their grief, helped put out fires with her own hands. She never sat on a throne again. And Ned Stark? He walked the halls of the Red Keep each morning, a quiet figure among ash-stained stones, reminding everyone who passed that sometimes victory comes not from fire or blood, but from the strength to choose peace when the world demands war.